Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners meeting. These are public hearings. The first one at 1:35 is a public hearing on the 2024 through 2025 biennium budget, transportation, environment, and land use, community planning and economic development, and public works. It is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser, Commissioner Wayne Fournier. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards, Commissioner Emily Klaus. We'll go ahead. Also in the boardroom, we have interim county manager Robin Campbell, as well as assistant county manager Rob Gelder, and our clerk of the board, Jamie Caldwell, as well as the budget team joining us. And I'll pass this off to Nicole Martinez, the budget and fiscal manager.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. So we're here, as mentioned by the Chair, to talk about the 24 and 25 biennium budget. These are public hearings that are required by state law. Today, we're going to kick off by speaking about transportation and environmental and use. If you could pull up the PowerPoint, I'll get into the structure for the meetings as well. So this afternoon, I'll introduce a department or an office. I'll get into what the department does, as well as speak to some of the policy level requests that are included in the biennium. I'll go through all the departments that are located within that strategic area, so land use and transportation today. And then I'll turn it back over to the board to move forward with asking for public comment. We will recess until the next scheduled hearing, and that's at 2:30. I'd like to take the opportunity before we dive right into the budget just to thank all the offices and departments for all their assistance throughout the budget process starting in January. I know it's been a long haul, as well as those departments and offices here today to be able to speak to the budget. Thank you. Okay. All right, let's get going. Next slide. Thank you. So just to recap on the 24-25 biennium, this page here is the combined operating and capital budget for 24 and 25. The expenditures for 2024 at $555.8 million, with revenue at $442.9 million. In 2025, the expenditure is $512.4 million, with revenues at $426.9 million. So I give you an overall, and we'll get into the actual departments and offices. So the first department we'll speak about today is community planning and economic development, land use regulations, development and construction permits, compliance and federal permits for stormwater standards, WSU extension services, and county fair. These are some of the services that community planning and economic development oversees. The policy level requests located in the 24-25 biennium include WSU extension salary increases, reinstatement of the fair and event coordinator, developmental service professional service increases, developmental service reference book increases, general fund allocation to support non-recoverable fee activities, as well as additions to the flood hazard mitigation, an update to that plan, Summit Lake land transfer, and as well as an update to the growth management plan update. This budget also includes general fund reductions. In 2024, the total amount is $15.9 million, and in 2025, it is $16.2 million. Okay, so I'm going to jump right over to Public Works. So Public Works, they work on roads and transportation, solid waste, noxious weeds, lake management districts, utilities, parks, and trails, and storm and surface water services. So policy level requests for Public Works, they have taken attention to lake management districts as far as budget adjustments, as well as transfers from the Public Works Department to Public Health and Social Services, as well as indirect costs transferred to the general fund, as well as the Offutt Lake Management District budget is also included in the biennium. Public Works has a number of requests here, so I'm not going to go through every single one of them. There's 2 slides worth of them, but I will point out a few here. So there is a community litter cleanup program staff, noxious weed program manager, accounting analyst, traffic operations supervisor, road operations supervisors, administrative assistant training coordinator. These are some of the positions that are included in the 24-25 biennium. And if we go to the next slide, Public Works Pavement Preservation Program, a senior civil engineer, water and sewer consolidation, and stormwater utility retrofit and restoration studies. The total 2024 budget is $137.9 million, and in 2025, $118.9 million. So those are the two departments to speak about this afternoon at 1:30. That was very brief, but if there are any questions, I'm open.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
No questions from me at this time. Thank you.
No questions? Okay. So we will open it up for a public hearing at this time. So for people who are interested in making public comment, please introduce yourself, including the address of your site and the county. And speakers are limited to a total of 4 minutes to address the board. Okay, so no one signed up. There's Mr. John Pettit. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I understand this is for public comment and questions. So I'm going to start out with a couple questions for the Public Works Director or appropriate personnel. Before leading into that, I'm going to mention to you, yesterday I'd heard that there's about $2.8 million of road funds being transferred over to the general fund to balance the budget. And then within minutes, I also heard that we have too much money in the general fund and we got to be spending it down. Seemed like a rather unique combination. So, and this is a biennial budget, so we're probably talking multiplying times 2, which means that the appearances, we have about $5.6 million being transferred out of the road funds over to the general budget over the next biennium. So my first question is going to be could you tell us what the approximate cost is per mile of chip seal, which is the main source that you use for handling a majority of our roads, and considering about $5.6 million worth of money taken out of the fund, how many miles does that perhaps translate to that the people in the unincorporated county get to be denied proper maintenance on their roads? And how much maintenance is typically needed on those roads?
Good afternoon, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. Cost per mile for chip seal right now is about $60,000 per mile. So just doing the simple division will give you the number of miles. What was the second question? Third question. What was the third question that you had?
It was, how much are we going to be losing? And so what you're telling me is it's going to be 70 miles, is like 70, 80 miles, 90 miles? 93 miles of lost maintenance. Okay. And the second, well, I think, I'll give you another question.
Okay.
Okay. You also, Public Works also handles the parks, under the parks provision. And I have a big concern about use of park impact fees appropriately and getting more park land for us. We have a growing population. Could you tell me approximately how much is being dedicated towards the maintenance of the several hundred acres of usable park? And what is the means to ensure that park impact fees are not being used for maintenance or operations for the county parks?
I'll speak to the second question first. We do not use park impact fee dollars to fund maintenance and operations. We use those for capital projects. A portion of them, as you know, we cannot fund a capital project 100% with park impact fees, so we do a proportionate share. And there has been questions raised as to the use of park impact fees on our projects, and the state auditor is in right now looking into that based off of questions that were raised. And so I'm comfortable that the process that we're using is within the realms of what we should be using those dollars for. And if it's not, then the state auditor's office will advise us accordingly. With respect to the total dollar amount for maintenance and operations, is it the 900 general fund, and then about 370 So 1.2,900,000 from the general fund and about 300,000 in park or in conservation futures.
Is that over 3 years?
That's annually.
Annual. Sure, you can sit down, but I do want to compliment the people taking good care of our roads and taking care of us during times that is difficult. And who knows, maybe we'll even have some flood action happening shortly with all the different things going on. The next questions I'm going to have is going to be for one of my favorite departments to interact with, CPED. And one of the issues at hand, particular interest to me, is that it was determined, and I'm sure 3 of you commissioners are aware of this, that the county cannot use collection of fees for permitting to be supporting 100% of the operations for the CPED operation as such, in terms of permitting and all of that. There's a certain amount of, you're going to just provide the service to the public. That being said, how much is going to be dedicated each year for the next couple of years from the general fund to compensate for that? And the follow-up on that is, from what I understand, even though we acknowledge that the fee schedule has been in excess of actual cost, I also understand there is no plan to actually have a fee schedule reduction for permitting for the next year or two. And so I'd like to have an explanation. Why aren't the fees going down if we've decided that they were in excess of the proper amount?
All right. Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you for your questions. Let me see if I can get these right. I'm definitely going to have to ask for you to refresh a couple of them. So I think you're referring to the recoverable and the non-recoverable, and we did, in terms of transparency, hire an outside firm this year to conduct a fee study. That firm, FCS Group, went through all of our budgeting and our processing and looking at what we were committed to the permit fees and what work was being done that wasn't permit fee related. Under RCW, counties are required to only be charging the funds that are used in permit to permit activity. So non-recoverable items such as when Brett Burris, our development services manager, is requested to go into a compliance issue or to help write a code that helps with the shoreline master program or comprehensive plan items, those cannot be permit related activity charged to the permit funds. And so that non-recoverable funds needs to be part of the general fund. And so just in big, broad numbers, I'm going to pull up our fiscal manager to provide the input on the development services budget total and what FCS Group determined was our non-recoverable in the Development Services Fund 4124. So Summer Miller, will you please come to the podium?
Hi, Summer Miller, Fiscal Manager for CPED. And so 4124 is the Development Services budget, and FCS determined that out of our approximately $5.6 million budget for this year, 3.8 million was recoverable and about 1.8 million was not recoverable.
Thank you. And so that lends to the request on the, let's see, I want to get the number right here. 1.424 million in general fund request for B2711. And that we think, Mr. Pettit, will be an ongoing relative general cost in terms of the non-recoverable. We have created permit efficiencies, which will continue to reduce the time that the permit activity takes. But every time we reduce the time that we charge at an hourly rate, it also reduces the revenue that we're generating. And so finding that balance between the recoverable and the non-recoverable is going to be an ongoing task. And if I recall the last part of your question addressing the permit fees, we needed to get this data in place before we brought anything to the Board of County Commissioners. So the expectation is the next thing that the board has invested in is new technology to help also provide self-service for the permitting process. That will go in place mid-2024, and then we'll start to see what information we need to present to the Board of County Commissioners in terms of the permitting costs going forward. Anything I missed?
No, you answered the question.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll be asking a couple more questions, but in brief, if somebody determines something costs too much, the appropriate thing is take immediate action to pull back the cost by the same percentage. Don't say, we'll wait a year or two and see what happens. One of your primary things you've had for complaint by departments has to do with excessive fees in terms of the amount of being charged. So, and I think another question that's kind of come up here is that we've been waiting and waiting. The public's been waiting and waiting and waiting for the promised situation of a new system that's going to be happening. Is there any absolutes that mid-24 is the time? Are we going to be out there at 25 or 26? Or what is the key that's going to make sure that happens?
So I'll address the first statement. What FCS Group found in terms of our fees currently is that they are not excessive. In fact, in many cases, they're lower than the standard average for our other counties that are relative to our size. So that's an important piece to remember. Second, in terms of the technology, there are no absolutes, but we appreciate the hard work of our IT department, who is interfacing with the group that's implementing Excella. And we've found so far that we're on target. We've had a couple of setbacks as we have staff that are working on the plan reviews. Also, we're doing the testing and the creating the algorithms for the new permit database system. But our hope is that 2024 midway that we'll have this in place. But it's all on us to make sure that we keep our technology folks engaged in the process and that our plan reviewers can keep it going. But thus far, we've had good success staying on track.
During the study that came out that you were giving reference to, there was 4,510 permit processes that were considered to be in the backlog. And there was suggestion for needed additional employees that would obviously need to be funded through the general fund. Could you tell me what is the plan on that currently? And just in closing, I will say that I have a very good relationship with their department and appreciate the good work that I've had working with them.
Well, I appreciate that kind closing, Mr. Pettit. So in terms of the backlog, what I've referenced previously is the first step was efficiencies. And we put in place before the pandemic, working through the project review timeline. Second has been the investment that the board made during that period into the technology. And third, we're thinking about how we get the right people in the right place. We also know that in terms of turnover and staff turnover, we're working really hard to make sure that the folks that come in are retained because that knowledge is really an important part of the permitting review process. And so finding those things that help our applicants get through the process in a way that honors the code and ordinance, but also allows for our staff to not get burned out is extremely important. And so we're not quite there yet because we have a couple of other things that we need to put in place. Like I said, the efficiencies in the project review timeline and the technology, and then we'll be able to know better what more people we should be requesting from the Board of County Commissioners. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I want to make sure that we let these successes that the board is in the process of implementing take place first.
Any additional public comment?
Chair, Commissioners. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Barry Halverson. I'm with the Lake Lawrence Lake Management District. I'm also here today representing the Thurston County Lake Management District Leadership Team. I'd like to welcome our two new commissioners, District 4, Wayne Fournier, District 5, Emily Klaus. It's a pleasure to see you up here on the panel. And there's just a few comments that I would like to make, Chair. One is the Lake Management Districts support the budget adjustments that have been put forward by Public Works. I also support the transfer of Public Works funds from the Lake Management Districts to the Public Health and Social Services Department, and the Lake Management District indirect cost transfer to general funds. On that particular note, there's an issue before you in the budget adjustments for, I believe it's about a $29,000 thing for general funds to reimburse the indirect costs for the 2024 and 2025 budgets. What I'd like to tell you about that, and you've heard me talk about this before, is that budget adjustment is absolutely necessary. As I've said before, when we're making this adjustment from Public Works to Environmental Health, the devil's in the details, and we don't know what those details are yet. Currently, we're working very closely with the Assistant County Manager, Rob Gelder, on this, and we've also Ms. Campbell on what has been initially identified as a 5% administrative rate to the LMDs. One of the questions I have is it going to be a 5% admin rate initially, or is it going to be something larger? We need to know that. That's the details that we haven't got yet. We understand that that admin rate can fluctuate based on the actual usage of the LMDs, of the environmental health services and the county services, and that those adjustments will be made somewhere down the line, 6 months or 12 months from now, when you do a budget adjustment. And then we will really find out what the cost was and how that transfer actually happened. But until then, the LMDs need that reimbursement of indirect interfund cost in order to help us make it through this transition period. And we'd like you to know that the LMDs as a group are working tirelessly, effortlessly, and continuously to make this adjustment and this transition as least impactful on the county and the LMDs as possible, so that come January 1st, we can get off on the right foot and continue to do the great work that we're doing out there for our lake stewardship programs. So with that, I would just like to thank the county staff, Mr. Gelder in particular, Mr. Stuart Whitford from Environmental Health, for all the effort that they put into working with us on this initiative to move this thing forward. And we really appreciate it. And we just need your help in this one primarily major issue to the LMDs to get this thing moving forward and to make that transition as smooth as possible on the financial side of it. So again, welcome new commissioners. Thank you for all your work and your service. And really only the question I have is, what is that admin rate going to be? We also understand that this budget that you're getting approved right now won't have the LMD budget readjustment for the admin rate in it. It still has the interfund costs in it because that didn't get input at a time to make that transition. At least that's what we've been told, and we believe that to be the case. So after this is all done, there's going to have to be some budget adjustments to take those interfund costs out and put the admin rate in place. If I'm understanding correctly, Ms. Campbell, that's what we understand. Is that true?
I'm sorry, could you restate your question, Mr. Halverson?
Yeah, we understand that the budget that's being approved by our county commissioners on the 15th of December
Right?
is the budget that was implemented with the interfund cost included, not the admin rate.
Correct.
And so the,
But,
Tomorrow's discussion it's on the errata sheet.
oh, it's on a list of things to correct.
okay, so will that correction be made for this budget cycle, or will there have to be an amendment to the process after this is approved?
So we have a list of items that we will be reviewing with the board tomorrow, asking them to make those corrections before they adopt the budget for next year, not to wait until next year. So if you're on the list, we're gonna ask to get it fixed.
Okay, and that's what we're asking, is that we get that fixed before, in this cycle, during this budget, so we don't have to go back through an amendment process after the fact. And that will help greatly. Now, the other question is, we have not heard exactly what the county's looking at as far as a 5% admin rate or something different.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Gelder, who you've been working with.
Right.
I have not seen the most recent proposals.
So this will be part of the conversation with the board tomorrow relative to the changes from the indirect to an admin rate. What has been provided to the budget office is based on a 5%. Knowing that, like you alluded to, that there will be the reconciliation that is required. So if it ends up becoming or end up costing 10%, then the LMGs will need to make up the difference, so on and so forth.
And that will be based on each individual lake management district, depending on their use of the county resources.
Correct.
Okay. So
That's what you wanted to-
again, I appreciate everything that you've done, all the efforts by the county commissioners and the county staff in moving this thing forward. It's been a difficult process. Again, the devils are in the details. We don't know what all those details are yet. And we've still had individuals back and forth from the lake management districts having concerns over those details and how they're going to be worked out. So there will be hiccups, but we're prepared to address those as they come and to work with the staff and you as needed. So thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just also want to extend wholehearted thank yous to Tim Wilson in Public Works, because you don't go from any transition. There may be a receiving team, but if you don't have a sending team that is really invested in that smooth transition, it doesn't happen as well. So I want to thank Tim for being there and being very, very, very responsive for the litany of emails that I have sent him over the past several months.
Any additional public comments? Okay. It's 2:02. Nicole, anything you would like to add before? Any questions for Public Works or Community Planning? No? Okay, so we're in recess until 2:30. We'll be picking up with our next public hearing.